All right, we're back live again, Metabolic Health Summit 2022. Not only do we get to interview a lot of the big brains in the group, the scientists, the researchers, the clinicians, but we also get to hear the personal stories of people who have been personally affected by ketogenic diets, by improving metabolic health for a variety of different conditions. And right now we got Miles. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I know you're going to speak a little bit later, but I'd love for you to tell our audience a little bit about your story so we can see how you were benefit from a ketogenic diet to really bring it home to the personal touch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Miles Sullivan. I'm a 26-year-old from Boston, Massachusetts. I started the ketogenic diet. It's now 4 years ago as of this month. So when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with a ganglioglioma brain tumor in my right temporal lobe. And it was causing focal seizures. So when I was 20, I had a brain surgery that resected a tumor on July 26, 2016. It did not cure the epilepsy, but the main point of that surgery was to just get the tumor out of there. 2 years later, I went forward with another brain surgery to try and relieve the seizures. And just to kind of put it in perspective, I was having 5 to 7 a day. Focal seizures. And for those who aren't familiar, I wasn't familiar with what a focal seizure was at the time. I'm sure you are, but it's pretty much almost like a mental lapse in time for someone experiencing it. It can be convulsant, but mine were not. So it took a while to even be diagnosed. But my second surgery was a much more aggressive surgery. It was a partial temporal lobectomy. They took out about a golf ball size of brain tissue. And in the ICU of that recovery phase, I had another seizure. So unfortunately, that surgery didn't work. But during the recovery process, my mother was following a fellow brain tumor survivor named Josh Perry, who was a professional BMX athlete who was using the ketogenic diet to manage his mental health and his issues. So I reached out to him. He had thousands of followers, didn't think he'd have time to reach back out to me. But he immediately reached back out and put me on the diet. And almost instantly, within a week, I went on a 80% fat, 75 to 80% fat, 25% protein, 5% carbohydrate, therapeutic ketogenic diet. And within a week, it started going 5 to 7 a day to 4 a day, and then weeks and weeks going on. And now it's been 4 years I've been ketogenic, and it has now been over 2 years seizure free from the diet, and also with medication as well. So I have been tapering off medication, but I think it's important to share that it works congruently with also modern medicine. So it wasn't one or the other. It just happened the combination really helped me personally. So
yeah, such a great point that as an adjunctive therapy to add to it. But so many interesting points about your story is that, this wouldn't have been brought up to you really unless you found it. And I think that's such an important message that, this community, that if you are struggling with something, if you have questions about it, reach out to people in this community because they want to help. So did you find that they were, like you said, you didn't think he'd get back to you, but he did. And once you tapped into the community, were you sort of surprised by how much assistance and help there was?
Honestly, I have goosebumps right now, even talking about it. I mean, if it weren't for this community, I don't know if I'd still be here today. 5 to 7 seizures a day is no way to live. And I know there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that have it worse than that. It took, just a random act of kindness from someone like Josh and Dr. Ryan Lowry and all the other people here at this event, like Victoria Field, Dr. Dom, yourself, to really, reach out and help in something as complicated as nutrition, something that's such a, such a diverse field or complex field. So, it really made the difference because I was forced to become kind of an expert in something I knew nothing about that directly impacted my quality of life. And also being kind of discouraged by the people we relied on most, medical doctors. And again, I want to emphasize that to no fault of their own, not maliciously, but it's tough to prescribe a diet, right, for an adult because you can't really control what they're intaking and eating. So my doctors kind of said, that might be, you might want to be careful of that diet. It might be bad for your heart. You might have a heart attack, things like that. So to make a long answer short, or even longer, sorry, this summit and people like yourself make it so people like me can regain control of their life. Absolutely.
That's why it's so important to share your story, and for clinicians to understand your story, and for the everyday person to understand your story as well. But I mean, here you are, a 20-year-old, and to have to deal with a brain tumor. I mean, that is enough to just turn your life in a tailspin, something that nobody, God forbid, should ever have to go through. And then to have to like completely upend your diet and change everything that you were eating. Was it difficult to do at first?
You know what's interesting is I find that a lot of people, and I want to word this carefully because yes and no. I think it was, if you had asked me before the first brain surgery, do this brain surgery or do keto, one seems like a quick fix, right? I mean, it is traumatic to go through a brain surgery, but I'll try and shorten my answer a little bit. Giving up sugar and carbs seemed like a no-brainer compared to debilitating seizures every day. So I could see it being more painful for other people that don't have they have other different conditions that aren't as debilitating and they can still somewhat function. But so it was challenging at first, especially learning like about gluconeogenesis and what really is keto, because there are things that are labeled keto that aren't actually keto, and sugar-free syrups that have maltodextrin in it that will kick me out of ketosis. So it was really tough at first, but I went in kind of as soon as I started getting those somewhat instant relief from the seizures. I think I just said, I'll take this over seizures all day. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It really does answer, because, a pushback you could say against the ketogenic diet is it's hard to do. It's hard to stick with. Nobody ever sticks with it long term. And I guess it's one thing if you have insulin resistance or 20 pounds to lose, you don't necessarily feel that as dramatically as 7 seizures a day.
Exactly.
And to get rid of those 7 seizures, that's the behavioral feedback, the positive feedback you need to say, I'm sticking to this diet. But if you can do it, that means other people can do it too. They just don't have sort of that glaring feedback. So what advice can you give to people that it's not, say it's not that hard, you can stick with it? Like, what advice can you give?
Honestly, find a support group. Reach out to people. I was really lucky of how welcoming and how supportive this group is. But weigh out the options, the pros and cons. What's tougher, giving up sugar and carbs, or dealing with your debilitation right now? And it's really up to, I don't want to preach my story on anyone else. It's really up to them. But the advice I would give is really try and become an expert in it. Ask someone like yourself and other experts in the field, what questions and data should I be showing my primary care physician to help support me in this? I found that once my epilepsy neurologist realized I'm having positive effects from this, he started saying, okay, let me refer you to a nutritionist, because I don't know enough about this because I wasn't taught in it, but it seems like it's working for you. And if you want to go through with this, even though there's no long-term human studies on the effects of your cardiovascular health, go for it. So I think be an advocate for yourself, reach out to experts in the field. And I hope that's the answer. That's all I can really think of is be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great. Be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer. And look, it's sort of easy to get up here and talk about different studies and talk as a clinician. And for you though, it's very vulnerable to sort of open up the window to who you are and your history and everything you've been through. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I think you've got sort of the harder job of sharing information than all the scientists. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, that pretty powerful story. And I mean, it really brings home what we're doing here, right? We're talking about studies, we're talking about science, but this is why we're doing it, because we can help individual people and transform their lives. So just such a wonderful lesson, a wonderful story. So join us here more for our live streaming on MHS 2020 for even more amazing stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. That was great.